I'd like to show you now how a backrun or a bloom can easily occur in watercolor paintings. I'm going to first show you just a quick demonstration on what happens when you have two areas of wet paint that touch each other. Now, we have talked about this in the previous painting, and actually earlier in this painting I touched a spot that was wet and it just ran into the next one. So it will probably, over time, it will start to bloom and come out into this blue section. So we try, unless it's something that you want to happen, try not to let two wet edges touch each other. Now, in the previous painting, in the Xenia painting, we talked a little bit about softening hard edges, and we're going to do that in a few minutes in the Moss Verbena. Let's say I have a hard edge here and I want to soften it. If I run my brush next to it, fully loaded with plain water, it's not going to work real well. It's going to bloom out. Let me make that a little larger so you can actually see what it's doing. See how it's spreading? One of the principles of water is considered a universal solvent. So if you have plain water and then you have an area with water mixed with paint pigment or water mixed with salts, the plain water is always going to want to run toward the water that has a higher concentration of salts in it, because it wants to dilute it. So that is going to start a bloom. I did some earlier where it does take some time sometimes for it to appear, but you can see how that can really mess up an even wash. Let's see how we can correct that or avoid that. I have a nice hard edge and I would like to soften it a little bit. You've seen me do this many times. I've always got a paper towel in my hand. I just wipe off the excess. Now you want it to be a little moist or it's not going to pull any of this paint out, but you don't want it to be super wet. That way you can soften the edge and it's not going to bloom into the rest of it. So there's a fine line to softening an edge, not having too much water on your paintbrush. That will solve that problem. Let's just see another example of how water moves. I'm going to get this real wet. This is a beautiful Prussian blue color. This is going to be a nice wet mixture. So it's kind of important to know how water is reacting and how your paint pigments are reacting with each other. So that's good and wet. I'll just take a little pinch of salt. It may take a few minutes for that to show up with its effect. But what happens is, because the salt obviously is extremely salty, any water that is surrounding it is going to rush toward that salt, trying to dilute it, and it's going to carry some of the paint pigment with it. So in a few minutes, when this dries and we remove the salt, there's going to be some pretty white areas right there, like snowflakes, where the water has carried the pigment in, trying to dilute that salty area. So you can see now, as we're talking, that this is really blooming out. So when you're doing an even wash, for example, you're doing a sky or you're going across the page and you want it to be nice and even, just be careful if you were to come along and make it, maybe you want to do a graduated wash. That's another thing to practice. We could do that sometime. You have to be careful when you come in with something that's more watery, or you want to go back and correct something. Let's say I wanted that lighter. So I'm going to go back. You virtually have to start at the top again and go down. You see it's already creating a hard edge and it's starting to bloom out. Because I'm on a slant, if I turn that the other way, it's probably going to run more that way. So to get rid of that line, I'd have to come back to the top, come down, broad strokes. Come all the way up to the top, do it again, and it will even that line out. So once you get used to that, the nature watercolor, then you're gonna be fine, but some people get frustrated by that in the beginning. Now if I want that whole thing darker and I want to go down, I can start dark. Let's say I want to do it what we call a graduated wash. Come down, I don't go and put any more paint on the brush. I just come down gradually and see I'm running out. It's getting lighter and lighter and lighter. Graduated wash, dark at the top, and as you go down, it gets lighter. Or you can work the other way up. But that is a nice bloom. You can see the salt here starting to create the pattern. I just wanted to show you and tell you the principle behind it, what the water is actually doing. It's trying to dilute this area because this area has more salts or more pigments in the mixture. It's trying to dilute it. So that's your classic back run. We are ready to put the first wash on the stems, which are to the left and to the right of this bloom stalk. We're calling this the bloom stalk, and these are the stems and the leaves. So I've mixed up a pale wash of Hooker's Green. I believe it's Hooker's Green Deep. And we're just going to go right over. You don't need to water or paint water on there beforehand. This is just the first initial wash. We're going to get that to dry before we do any more on the stems. Don't worry too much about accuracy right now because they're going to have other things done to them which will camouflage any flaws that you might have right now. All right, the next thing I plan to do is to take that cotton swab and soften the centers of these flowers right here. I had a chance to do a couple more, so I can do that demonstration. I'm going to try to do with cotton swab, but if it doesn't work out that well, then I will convert over to a brush. You can do the same thing with a brush or a scrubber brush. And what I would like to do, we'll look at the reference picture. You'll see that I widened up this a little bit. These cotton swabs are not really staying together as well as I would like. They need to be slightly moist. We'll have to rub a little bit. You see how that is softening the edge there? You can bring it out just a little bit too. Out into the petal. I'm going to do 3 of these. Just rub it along that hard edge. You may have to check later to make sure no fibers got onto your painting. Well, that one looks pretty good. I'll extend it out just a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of lemon yellow with just the tiniest amount of green in it, more yellow than green. And just dab the middle. We'll come back later and put a few accents in there. If it's too bright, you can lighten it up later. I'm going to lift just a little bit of this around the edge. I want that to be a little more light. I'm going to keep to this circle here in the middle. We can just do just a touch more here. Let's try this one. Just come out just a little bit. Do a little lifting. Make this extend out just a little further. Let's do some over here. A little too much water on my brush there. Also, I'll take this opportunity just to lighten up a few spots on the petals. We'll come back later and put some dark accents in there as well. I think that's good for now. Let me put a couple more up here real quick. Actually, I'm not quite finished with that flower. I'll show you how to do it with just the brush. Actually, you probably get better control with the brush. Sometimes those Q-tips are a little bit bulky to get into these tight spaces. That works pretty well. Okay, that looks good. We'll see you for the stem details in part 3.